For centuries, feudalism was the backbone of medieval Europe. Lords ruled land, vassals pledged loyalty, peasants worked the soil, and everyone had a place. But that order didn't last forever. It cracked, it collapsed, and it gave rise to a new world. This is the dramatic story of how feudalism fell from black plagues to peasant revolts, war, and money changing everything. Feudalism wasn't a single law or system, it was a web of loyalty. A king granted land to lords. Lords gave land to knights. Knights protected peasants, and peasants worked for everyone else. But it wasn't fair. If you were born a serf, you likely died one. Bound to the land, bound to your lord. Your life wasn't yours. Feudalism was about land power. Wealth wasn't in gold or banks, it was in acres, crops, and who owed who. This worked. Until it didn't. The system was fragile. And by the 14th century, it began to crumble. First came war. The 100 Years' War 1337–1453 tore France and England apart. Lords died, lands burned, and peasant conscripts were dragged to fight wars they didn't start. Then came famine. The Great Famine of 1315–1317 wiped out crops. People ate tree bark and rats. Entire villages starved. And then came the Black Death. In 1347, the plague arrived in Europe. Within a few years, 1/3 of the population was dead. There were too few peasants left to work the land. And suddenly, labor had power. With so many dead, peasants began demanding better wages and freedom. And for the first time in history, they revolted. In 1381, English peasants led by Wat Tyler stormed London. They killed officials, burned tax records, and demanded an end to serfdom. The king pretended to agree, then crushed them. But the idea didn't die. Across Europe, uprisings flared, France, Italy, Germany. The old order had lost its grip. Lords tried to pass laws to freeze wages, bind workers again, but people no longer feared them the same way. They had power, they had leverage, and they wanted more. Meanwhile, cities were rising. Trade was booming. Merchants, not lords, were becoming the new elite. Feudalism was based on land, but the new world was based on money. Banking emerged in Italy. Guilds in cities regulated trade. Townspeople gained independence from feudal lords and formed their own governments. Education spread. Universities were founded. A middle class began to form. The church, once feudalism's backbone, began losing control. Kings centralized power. Armies became professional. Loyalty shifted from lords to crowns. The village wasn't the center of life anymore, the city was. By the 1500s, feudalism was a shadow of its former self. Serfdom still existed in parts of Eastern Europe, but in the West, it was dying. The printing press spread ideas fast. The Reformation shattered religious unity. The discovery of the New World brought riches beyond land. People moved. People questioned. The rigid order cracked. Feudalism didn't fall with a bang, but it unraveled thread by thread, and in its place came the Renaissance, the modern state capitalism. From a world where your birth defined your destiny, to one where that chain could be broken. That's the legacy of the fall of feudalism. A world reborn,